Welcome to Behind the Tool Belt, where the stories are bold, the conversations are real, and the insights come to you live, raw, and uncut. Every week, host Ty Cobb Backer sits down with game changers, trailblazers, and industry leaders who aren't afraid to tell it like it is. No filters, no scripts, just the truth. Please welcome your host of Behind the Tool Belt, Ty Cobb Backer.
Hey, we're live. Welcome back to everybody to episode 274 of Behind the Tool Belt. I am your host, Ty Cobb Backer. Thank you for joining us on this fantastically flipping Wednesday. Sun's back out. I believe that we ended up actually getting some hail earlier today. So that's good for us up here in the great state of Pennsylvania. And like I had mentioned last week, Vic and I plan on doing some things a little bit differently, and Vic is in the background as usual. And today we actually had planned on going live from my truck again. We ran into some technical difficulties. We completely changed things around from the way that we were going to do them, or that the way that we did them last week, because I didn't really like the way that it was going through GoPro. GoPro had its like own interface that we could stream through Facebook, and it was just kind of difficult to see and read people's comments. And then of course I couldn't figure out how to freaking end the live without actually hitting the off button on the GoPro. So anyhow, we kind of came back to the drawing board here a little bit, because we had our YOLO box that we haven't broke out, and it had some updates that needed done on that, which if you're not familiar with YOLO box, it is your all-in-one streaming, audio, video monitor. It's basically a small computer that picks up on a network. You can actually add a SIM card to it and pick up, if you have AT&T or Verizon or whatever. So we were going to attempt to pull that off from my truck, because we have built-in Wi-Fi in the vehicle and of course power and all that good stuff there, but something wasn't working right. So we thought, screw it. So we kind of came back, and we're back in the office here real quick. Thought I'd get back on here because this show must go on. You know how dedicated we are, but be prepared for some changes coming up as you know, and as you can see, and as you're experiencing here with us, that we're changing things up. We want to get back to some of the bootstrap grassroots of, plugging, TC Backer and of course some of our sponsors. Before I forget them, I want to do a big shout out to Roofle, Lead Scout Hook Agency. If you want to know more about them, put a comment in the comment section, and we will hook you up with their websites and get you pointed in the right direction there. But again, thank you all for joining us live today. And you're going to see a lot more of this of me, doing more Q&A. So if you guys have any questions about life, about business, about personal development, professional development, anything like that, please put them in the comments. And I will answer them to the best of my ability while we're here live. But then I can also go back in the comment section there and maybe put a more elaborate answer in there for you guys to be able to answer your questions. But we got some great guests on the horizon. We are going to continue to keep bringing people in. Brad Akers from Brad builds businesses, I think. And I think he's got a couple other platforms and stuff like that, but he'll be on next week. And then Woody is actually flying in from Texas. He'll be in studio in a couple weeks, I think sometime first or second week, or Wednesday rather, in April. So Woody's coming on. So it won't just be me running my mouth and discussing kind of where I'm at today in the world and mentally and what season I'm going through, because we talk about that a good bit, the ebbs and flows of life and the ebbs and flows of business and like that. And of course, you guys know that we talk a lot about legacy and leadership and or whatever, that we're shooting for, right? Like we want to leave an impact. And it's funny because my nephew, Zach, came in to see me. He works for us. He's been working for us now for a couple of years. He's been such a great asset to the team and has such a powerful impact on the team. And he brought me some photos in of some family members. And I was very young, and I used to have a ponytail down to the middle of my back. And he shared this photo with me. I might as well bring this up because this photo had taken me back quite a few years. So I am, however, from a long line of carpenters. And my dad, I consider him a master carpenter. My great grandfather, his father, and you guys have probably heard me tell that part of the story. My uncles, my grandparents, like everybody in my family is pretty much a carpenter. And a very good carpenter. I'm not just talking about like rough framing houses and stuff like that, but I'm talking, furniture and cabinetry and staircases and things like that. But so I had moved to York County, a couple decades ago, let's say that. And, I moved in with my sister and my brother-in-law, and I really didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, but they were gracious enough to kind of, help me get back up on my feet. And my brother-in-law, Rick, his best friend, his name was Pat. And hence where his construction company's name came from is Par One, and Par stands for Pat and Rick. And that's, there's probably 3 different other versions of that story, but that's what I remember of it. And of course my nephew, who still works, well, his name's Pat too. So it's very fitting, and it's such a great story. And Pat, long story short, Pat, and I'm going to speak for myself on this, if it wasn't for Pat, who brought me into the siding and roofing space. And I want to say this goes back to, I say that I've been in the industry 30 plus years. So let's go back 30, probably close to 31, 33 years ago, 17 years old. And, I was introduced to Pat, who was at that time Rick, my brother-in-law's best friend, and Pat was in siding space, and he worked for a local company, GC Winters, an associate, and Glenn was his name, GC Winters, Glenn Winters, and so I went to work for those guys, and I was the ground guy. And so speaking of legacy, if it wasn't for Pat, because I could probably talk about that all day long, but if it wouldn't be for Pat. And I just showed his picture earlier for those of you checking in. Pat here, my nephew, of course, he was a lot younger in those days. Pat has passed on and is no longer with us. But, for me, and speaking for myself and in terms of legacy, if it wasn't for Pat, TC Backer wouldn't. And of course, if it wasn't for my brother-in-law and my sister, I can't not mention that too. But I'm pretty sure Pat showed Rick how to hang siding too, probably way before I came along. But I remember struggling and trying to get jobs and stuff like that. And Rick and Pat decided to start Par One Construction, and it was just us 3 for the longest time. And Pat showed me everything that I know today. And of course, I've learned some things and picked some things up over the years to be, better mechanically inclined and processes on installation and things like that. So if anyone ever asked me, like, what is my strongest suit when it comes to the profession I'm in, it's always been the production side of things, because that's where I grew up. I didn't get a business degree at Harvard or Yale or anything like that. I did end up going back to school many years later, and I went to York Business Institute for a while, actually, and had met some really great people there. But again, I didn't get like a major or anything like that in business, not even accounting, but I did take a lot of accounting courses. And I'm sorry, somebody keeps blowing my phone up. Obviously, they don't know who I am. And that we go live every day or every Wednesday at 12 noon PM. That's probably something very important, because they continuously keep calling me. Hopefully they'll leave a message and I'll get back to them. But, well, I guess we don't think about it where we come from enough, right? Like, don't forget where you come from, bum. And, I lived in a basement. I brought nothing with me, basically, like a Martin's bag, which is a giant grocery store over in Waynesboro. It's called Martin's. And literally I had that bag, and I slept on an air mattress in my sister's basement. And, those guys showed me everything, whether it was entrepreneurially, along with my dad and my mom and dad had owned a bar and a restaurant for a long time. So that aspect of customer service and things like that. But most importantly, the production side of things of knowing how to do takeoffs and measurements and installations and things like that all come from Rick and Pat. And I have another picture here of all of us together. You can't really see my ponytail, but my hair is pulled back in a ponytail. I'm sitting on a picnic table. That's going back a long time. I'm this little dork right there. And you kind of see I got my hair pulled back. And a lot of people don't tell them that story. Like, yeah, I used to have long hair. They're like, no way. And some of the other stories of the chaotic lifestyle that I lived back then, they don't believe me. And it's always a trip to reminisce and walk down memory lane. But, you know, the importance of legacy, the impact that we're leaving on people's lives today. And it's kind of like a catch-22. People don't realize the impact that they're having on people. But I think when it's brought to your attention and you are very intentional about, you know, legacy, leadership, leading by example, and not taking the credit for it, right? Like jumping back in and grabbing and pulling things back from people and, you know, taking away their growth and allowing them to figure things out, but at least pointing them in the right direction. And I know over the years, I've not done such a great job of always articulating the message very well. It's kind of like we hire people. And recently I'm going through this thing where it's a clarity note from Ty. I'm giving myself about 8 weeks to give everybody a clarity note of the direction of the company and the direction of their position. If the position is going to change or just, you know, and not everybody's note from Ty is going to be the same, but I am so guilty of, you know, there's a cemetery looking out my window here. So I'm going to use that as an example / metaphor where it's like, I'm so guilty of like, go to the cemetery. Okay. Not really giving them a reason. So they're kind of lollygagging on their way over to the cemetery, trying to figure out, you know, why is he sending me over to the cemetery, opposed to letting them know, like, the reason why I wanted them to go to the cemetery is because, hey, in that cemetery over there, there's an oak tree. And every time the wind blows, the lower limbs of that oak tree tend to blow across the top of the headstones. Could you go over to the cemetery, trim up the bottom of those tree limbs, and so that way when the wind blows, it doesn't affect them? Well, if I would have articulated the point, because I'm guilty of like hiring people, they're like, what do I do? Like, figure it out, is a lot of times has been my response over the years. So I know that is something that I wanted to work on this year, was like giving people better direction, better vision of where and why they're doing things, you know. And it's funny stories. I worked for a company called Homes by Keystone. I was an electrician there back when I was probably, you know, I don't even know. Cause like I said, I had moved to York County around when I was 17, but then I ended up moving back and I got a job down there as an electrician. But I had a mentor, I guess, my guide, to show me how to, you know, wire houses, modular homes and stuff up like that. But so he would basically just come in and be like, you got to drill all these holes and then pull all these wires. And some of these wires are for receptacles and some of these wires are for switches. Some are for smoke detectors. But he never really got real granular on it with me. Like, he never told me the difference between like the ground wire from the white wire from the black wire, and why some had red and some had green. You know, he didn't tell me the difference between a single pole switch or a 3-way switch. The ground wire, the green ground wire, and the red and the negative and the positive, and things like that. Like, he never really told me, you know, exactly why I was doing things. He just told me to do things, but he didn't exactly tell me why. And unfortunately, I've been guilty of that myself. But if I would have told somebody exactly why I needed them to go over to that cemetery, they would have grabbed the chainsaw and they would have ran. The vision would have been clear then. They would have had direction. They would have had motivation. They would have been able to just run over to the cemetery with their chainsaw. And while they were over there, they probably would have noticed that there was 2 other oak trees over there that needed trimmed up. And probably without asking me, because I've empowered them, right? I didn't necessarily, one of my sayings is, I can't even think of it right now. But anyhow, I've empowered people enough to that they would have saw that there was 2 other oak trees over there that needed trimmed up. And then they would have looked around and they would have realized that, hey, maybe I should break these leaves up over here. Maybe I should mow the grass. And hey, I can't even read the names on the headstones anymore. Maybe I should power wash them. But with that little bit of guidance up front and a little more, vision of like why I needed you to go to the cemetery, opposed to, hey, Vic, just pick that camera up. You know what I mean? Vic has a clear direction. He knows what it is that we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to create the most badass content possible. And Vic has the I don't even want to say it's an honor, but I have the honor of working with Vic and jiving and gelling and vibing with him, that some people in the building may not always get to see me on a day-to-day basis to hear that vision. So I thought, why not write these clarity notes to everybody? And considering the fact of like where we're at, we're in a different season. We're coming into a new roofing season, and it wouldn't hurt me myself to reevaluate and realign my vision and things like that. And it's okay. So if anybody out there that's listening to this, kind of like in a funk or something, they can't quite put their finger on, like what's going on, or, because sometimes you just wake up and you're kind of like, you're in a funk. And I've noticed myself being in a funk, and I just feel like I don't feel completed. I don't feel accomplished. And it's kind of like, I had to really do some inside. I had to take a look inside and find out like what's been going on. And it's just like this podcast, it's kind of like, I'm sure we're getting what we call, in the content world, viewer fatigue. Well, we also suffer from content fatigue as well. So one of many things that we're stepping up our game in, not just in TC Backer and not just in Lead Scout. And there's a lot of great things going on over there that I'm sure I could, create a whole entire podcast about Lead Scout. But, sometimes when we go through these seasons and these changes and stuff, like what got us here is not going to get us where we're going to go. And I think so much we threaten our long-term goals over our short-term emotions, whether it's our own short-term emotions or other people's reactions to the changes that we feel like we need to make. And we can't always get hemmed up. And I know it's hard. And especially for me, it's hard for me to not get in my way because of my emotions and the pain that I might be experiencing right now, or the pain that might be cast upon somebody else due to these changes and things like that. But I guess the message there, at least in this small little piece, is, don't get distracted by your short-term emotions and screw up your long-term goals. And the goal is on multiple fronts. Like we want to kick out like the best content that we possibly can kick out. And that's why we're changing things up, because we don't want you guys suffering from viewer fatigue. We don't want to suffer from content fatigue. And same goes in your personal life, right? Like if you're not waking up with purpose and you're kind of just waking up and going through your day by mistake and not very intentional about wanting to take care of your body, not wanting to take care of your mind. And I tend to slacken that thing. Sometimes I have to switch up the content that I'm listening to. I listen to a lot of Craig Groeschel. I listen to a lot of Bedro Keuilian. I listen to a lot of the Hermosis, both of which. And I kind of got to switch between all of them because I suffer from viewer fatigue. That's right, Jay. The key is to start small and build momentum and reconnect with your why. Exactly. And it's funny that you talk about your why, because I'm actually reviewing my why today. I pulled open my why. I have this note section on my phone here where over the years I've put in my why. So I don't forget, one, where I come from. Plus I jot down a lot of things, that might be on my mind that I could use later or not to forget. And it's good to journal too. It's kind of like my journal, and there's a lot of good stuff in there. So that way, maybe someday if I'm not here, right, Vic or Jana, somebody can pop open any of my devices. That's why I choose to use the Apple devices, because anything I do on my phone shows up on my MacBook, shows up on my iPad. And not that Google doesn't do that. I also use a lot of Google stuff as well. But I like using notes. I find that I can do just about anything in notes as I can in a Google Doc, and then I transfer it over to a Google Doc. And that's where I've started to create these clarity notes from Ty I'm starting with some key players. And then I'm kind of working our way down, and we just revamped our org chart, our organizational chart. And if you're listening to this and you don't have an organizational chart in your company, and I think there's a misinterpretation of why you should have an organizational chart. It's not always for who you're supposed to report to, but it's also very important to differentiate different silos or different departments. I hate both of those words because it creates separation and creates division, right? And division's another horrible D word that I don't like to use, but sometimes I have to use it in this context. Right now, I'm going to use the word, departments, right? It helps kind of clean up, and it gives me 1,000-foot view, so I don't forget people that are in certain departments, because I think we have close to 100 people that work for us today. So we need at different locations, from production to administrative to accounts payable to receivables to salespeople, sales managers, sales trainers, all of these people, and subcontractors, right? We do have a lot of our own in-house crews, window crews, gutter crews, and things like that. But we do have subcontractors too, that I don't want to forget about them too. And with them on the forefront of my mind with the organizational chart, right, then I can keep them in mind for, spring fling parties and events and stuff, which I know that we're due for something. I don't know if we're going to start working on the food drive, or if we're just going to kind of do like some kind of open house networking spring fling. So if David Bruno, if you're out there listening to this right now, and if you want to be a part of maybe hosting another, networking, but it just kind of keeps everybody engaged and everybody coming back, and it just revigorates and rejuvenates the culture that we've strived so hard to create. And culture goes into a lot, the piece of legacy as well, and what I mean by that is, like, we've had a lot of people come into our organization, and they become family. They're not employees. They're family, they're teammates, they're co-members, co-leaders. And, most of them stay, and over the years, a couple of them left, and those that stay, continue to grow, whether it's personally, professionally, financially. They are not the same people as it was when they came here. And if somebody does leave, at least now they have the tools to go. And we've talked about this before, where it's like, I know when people come here, they're not the same person that they were. I know for a fact that I've changed. I've grown immensely. And again, that's what I'm talking about, leading by example and continuously working on myself so we can develop leaders. We can build teams. We can create legacies. Even the people that work here are creating legacies, like Glenn, for instance. Glenn has created such a legacy for himself, whether he knows it or not. And again, I don't have to take the blame or the blame or the credit for any of that, but I will take the blame, unfortunately, when shit does hit the fan. And that's the difference between selfish leadership or servant leadership, right? Like, we're here to serve. And when we can keep that on the forefront of our mind, and don't get it twisted. I am not the most always giving. I am not the most always forgiving. I don't always give grace when grace is, or being empathetic and things like that. And really, a lot of it has to do with what's going on with the 6 inches between my ears, right? But again, that's where all this personal development comes from. And I can tell you this, I'm not who I want to be, but I'm definitely not who I used to be. And on a day-to-day, I review my day every night, whether I want to or not, because it's just become a habit for me to do a reflection upon my day. Where did I do well? Where didn't I do so well? And the difference today for me is I know almost instantaneously when I'm not behaving or acting or performing very well. That is the difference today. So I am more apt and more prone to add an amends, correct my actions immediately, because let's face it, none of us are put on this earth to feel uncomfortable or feel awkward or feel weird or anything like that, right? So life is too short for us to not be happy. Wake up with a purpose and motivation and achieve that goal, whatever that goal is. I think we should all have like this 1 year, 5 year, 10-year goal, right? What does it look like? Where does Behind the Tool Belt look like in 1 year from now? And that's starting to come to fruition right now for Vic and I. Where does it look like? What does it look like in 5 years from now? Like, these are all things And I'm not saying dwell in the past or live in the future, have one foot in yesterday and one foot in tomorrow and pissing all over today. But you should have goals and you should have dreams and you should have aspirations. And most of that should affect and impact most people's lives positively. And when you can put that into perspective and start working that intentionally into your life, great things can happen. You start good people start to gravitate towards you because they want to be a part of that. They want to join a force that is to be reckoned with. And they know when there's that positive force, there is nothing that you can't do. And I said this to Kim the other day, and I might have mentioned this last week, but it's like what I can't do by myself, we can do together. Everything is we, even if I'm by myself, because it's not me. Whether it's the man upstairs or the force, the universe, or whatever the case might be, it's not me. I know for a fact I wouldn't be here. If it was left to my own devices, I wouldn't be here today. I know that. I know that I'm on borrowed time. I know that I don't want to take that for granted. And I'm going to totally take advantage of it and make the biggest impact that I possibly can. And I've been given second chances. So why wouldn't I give second chances? And I'm not saying, and see, there's a fine line there too of being taken advantage of too, that I've gone from both ends of that spectrum where I've been cold hearted and I've been overly generous and have been taken advantage of. But again, I think a lot of that was self-inflicted stuff. Right. And it's so hard to kind of like find that happy medium where you're given just enough and not ruining or spoiling people and giving them enough room to grow because you're not giving them too much. And I practice this a lot with my children. Rock, we had a family meeting the other day and it's kind of like, Rock, I don't mind doing these things, but you're going to have to do X, Y, and Z around the house. Right. And because I don't want to raise weak children. Right. So he's out, cleaning the shed. He's building things that I'm asking him because, he can build stuff now. He's 16 years old and he's getting ready to get his driver's license. He's getting ready to get a car. There's going to have to be fuel put in that car. There's going to have to be insurances paid and things like that. And over the summer, he's going to come work for us here at TC Backer Construction. But most urgently, he's got to do things around the house. Like if he wants a skateboard and he wants these things and all these pretty little things, that sometimes we can't always afford, which is also a good thing. Like we can't afford that right now. Right. Patience. He's going to have to learn patience. He's going to have to learn, tolerance. Right. And I think, I know he's such a great kid, Mackenzie, and Jacob has turned out to just be an outstanding citizen of society. I mean, I think Jana and I have done a great job with our kids and any other parent. It takes a village, right? It really does when it comes to raising children. It takes a village, but I guess getting back to what I was alluding to earlier, it's like what I can't do by myself, we can do together. And that is so important to not ruin it because I am the only person that can ruin this right now. At any given day, I can show my ass and go out there and just remove responsibilities and criticize people, who I've empowered, who I've encouraged to grow and allowed them to make mistakes over time. All it would take is one day for me to go out there and show my ass and don't get it twisted. I have done that, but over the years, I have built what I like to call the trust bank. Every now and then that I have to take a withdrawal, but I think for the most part that I've made enough deposits where if I do show my ass, where things don't go to plan as accorded, go or however that saying is, because sometimes things don't happen in our time. Like for instance, this has been a long winter for us. We haven't experienced a winter like this, and our projections were BHAGs. They were big, hairy, audacious goals, but I honestly feel like we can still achieve them, but we basically lost the entire first quarter of the year. And being from South Central PA, we do get winters. We usually get like a 1 or 2 week stretch where it's below 30 degrees and nobody's working. But it seems like for the past 3 months, like it has just been cold. It's been raining. It's been windy, 40 50, 60 mile an hour winds. And a lot of people are probably like, well, that's probably getting you more work, isn't it? And it's like, yeah, but like we can't even get out there to do it. The guys are working 1 or 2 days a week, but we try to keep everybody busy with 40 plus hours. And that tends to put a stress financially on the business. Yeah, yes, we had prudent reserve. We lasted for 4 to 6 months, prudent reserve. But when you start getting down and the overhead's still up, it creates stress, right, on the company. And our revenue goals weren't met yet. Now we're getting back on track, which we knew, but unfortunately that variable we couldn't control. All we could control was the variables that we could control. And we did the best we could. We cut some things back, our spending habits and things like that, but we didn't, knocking on wood, have to lay anybody off, cut out anything that really affected anybody. A lot of it had to do with just things that nobody really sees other than, a couple of our people on our leadership team and things like that. And we actually were able to pick up some really great people. My daughter, so totally grateful. Mackenzie, big shout out to Mackenzie, who's become Kim's right-hand woman. We picked up Pete, big shout out to Pete. Who is came from a $1 billion company. We were blessed to have him in our regime because he is just so freaking smart, right? And you can't be afraid. Can't be afraid to bring smart people in your circle, right? You can't. And this is the thing that I struggle with too, especially when I was younger. I was terrified. I was intimidated by bringing people or hanging out or going places where I knew other people. The people that were there were going to be smarter than me. And it's kind of like, what a freaking, what a lie that I was telling myself, and if I am the smartest person in the room and if I'm the smartest person in this building, I'm in the wrong building. I'm at the wrong event, right? Like I should not be, because if you know me, the only thing that I really have going for me, and don't get me wrong, I have common sense and I am street smart and I have all the things that it takes, the grit, the resiliency, all the things that it takes to be a successful entrepreneur and have great impact on people's lives. But again, going back to, I'm not a certified public accountant like Pete is, right? He is definitely stronger in that area than I am. Vic at this point in time has exceeded not just my expectations, but like, one point in time, it was just, this was an iPhone 8. And then we brought Vic in, and not really necessarily coming from the content creation background, but very intelligent when it came to audio and video, maybe more so audio, because he is a magnificent musician. But hopefully I've encouraged him enough. And I know I have, to become one of the greatest content creators that we know today, and he's making a name for himself in this space. And, slowly but surely, there are some things. And again, that's getting back to that topic of us switching things up. The more that he learns, the more that I learn, that, there is such things as viewer fatigue, that there are such things as content fatigue. And what got us here this 5 years, right? It's not going to keep us sustainable or relevant for another 5 years. Zach, it's okay that you're late, buddy, but thank you. Thank you for joining us and being a steady Eddie every week, coming in and coming out. So anyhow, I enjoy you guys. If you haven't liked, loved, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Vic just got us on iHeartRadio. We had enough downloads for that, but we are still in need of 1,000 downloads before YouTube, for Buzzsprout to monetize us. So we need 1,000 more downloads. So if you haven't downloaded any of these episodes yet, please do that. Episode it. If you like what you see, like what you hear, want to hear about a specific topic, please hit us up in the comments here. Bradley said he's going to be in Baltimore June 17th through the 20th. I'll see if I can make a quick trip up. That would be great. I don't know what days that falls on, but one of those days has to be a Wednesday, I would imagine. And if not, it doesn't really matter, because we're doing more things outside of our Wednesday content creation of Beyond the Tool Belt podcast. So maybe we can meet halfway, or maybe we'll even come down to Baltimore to see you, Jay, and create some kick-ass content and see where you're at and how you're impacting people's lives, because I know your head's in the right place, as Vic and I's are, and everybody here, the TC Backer and Lead Scout family is. So anyhow, I'm going to get off here. It looks like we're at about 30 couple minutes into this. And we've also found that it's very difficult for people to listen, for a complete hour. So we want to make this more viewer friendly, listener friendly, So anyhow, I'm going to get off here. Till next week. We got Bradley Akers, who will be our guest next week at our regularly scheduled Behind the Tool Belt, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Brad will be Zooming in, and we're going to probably, I know for a fact that we're going to kick out some kick-ass content. So until next week, like, love, subscribe, and share this with anybody that you think might get something out of this. Love you guys. Thanks for hanging out.